go. Get the movie poster up front and center. As yes, welcome everybody to episode 9. We're nearly in double figures. We're saving the best for last, hopefully. But first, we go back to 1986 to, I guess, one of Demme's earlier films in his Talking Heads days. Because David
I
Byrd's
want to
literally on the
say,
soundtrack.
were this and Married to the Mob the same year? Or is Married to the Mob 88?
I think Married to the Mob's 88.
Married to the Mob is 88 or 89. Because I know
I would know. I quite enjoy Married to the Mob.
I know the next film he did after it was something called Silence of the Lambs. I don't know if you've heard of it. Which when you look at, like, movie. I mean, we'll get into it into a minute. Hello, this is Ashley. Joining me is AJ.
I do have to say something right up front real quick.
I was going to get to that if it is what
I'm going to do my very best to not completely commandeer this conversation, because like a few years ago, me and my brother, you might have seen, did a top 15 movies of all time video. If that video had been a top 20, this would have been on it for me. So I'm sure much to Owen's chagrin, I could go for hours on this movie. So, but I will try to rein it in as much as I can. But I'm very passionate about this movie. So
you might have to help take up my end, because I could not get my computer to cooperate, so I was not able to watch the film prior to this video.
Oh, okay.
How long has it been for you?
I think I need more than 2 hands to count the years.
Well, this should be fun.
So yeah, Chris is here as well.
Here and clueless.
First thing I want to get to, though, rest in peace, Olivia Newton-John. I mean, it was sort of inevitable it was eventually going to come, given that, you know, her breast cancer had come back for its 3rd time, and due to the extent of it, it was like stage 4 and whatever. But it's annoying that there sort of isn't that much like of a film or a TV career that she sort of really had, other than concerts because of her music stuff, and then sort of the only 2 things, which of course were sort of on the verge of sort of the peak of her career, arguably, and that being Grease and Xanadu.
Yeah, the thing that I thought, I don't know if this is insensitive or not, but the thing that kind of caught me as like kind of eerie was the fact that she's known for Grease first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, isn't this the same way that we lost Kelly Preston? Breast cancer?
I think maybe, yes.
I know it's an unfortunately common thing, but that's just like the first thing my mind went to, and I just found it kind of eerie.
Yeah, but yeah, it's you know, I will champion Xanadu just because the music was from Electric Light Orchestra. That might be the only thing that film is going for. But, you know, the legacy of Grease will live forever, especially if they keep doing, like, hopefully now, like, they can never do a remake. I shouldn't say that because it's gonna happen probably. I mean, technically they already did, but wasn't it like a TV musical, like Peter Pan was, with Christopher Walken and Sound of Music? They already, like...
Julianne Hough might have been involved, I can't remember.
I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, just wanted to... Bri did mention it, but I was going to certainly bring it up as well. A big loss. But yeah, it's like... At some points, I will admit, this is the first time I've ever watched it. To be fair, I don't know of anything Demme before Silence of the Lambs. So it was weird seeing, wait, comedies that turned into thrillers? It's 2/3 of the way through? Because that was like, it was sort of like a comedy sort of road trip sort of like shenanigans sort of thing, and then it's like, oh, now we just knifing people and we shooting people.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I think when it initially came out, it was an acclaimed movie, but I think there were a lot of critics that had a lot of problems with the significant tonal change.
Yeah.
But and they usually say like, oh, it was this really great sort of romantic comedy kind of thing, and this sort of road trip kind of thing, and there's a sort of playfulness to its bad side, and then when it's a literal thriller, they got kind of thrown off. But I've always, to me personally, and maybe this is just my taste, but I've always looked at it as this movie has a really great first half and a legendary second half. I love anything from Leota forwards is some of my favorite stuff in movies ever.
It sort of is, okay, we lost him as well, and we've obviously gushed about him before in previous Q&As and things, but like as soon as he shows up, you think this is obviously before Goodfellas and like some of the peak of his stuff.
Yeah, I want to say this was his.
Josephine does mention in the trivia that basically he got in because Melanie was in acting classes with him.
Yeah, he did a SAG interview where he went through the whole story, and I couldn't remember the whole thing, but I'm pretty sure it was his first movie, right? He did like a soap opera before.
Yeah, but like even then, it's like this is gonna take a turn. Even in hindsight, I don't know whether like when you saw it the first time you were like truly sure, because he does sort of have this sort of like boyish sort of charm to him.
Exactly.
Not to do Grease stuff, but he does feel like Danny to some extent.
And the best part about that was one of the great things Leota could do was that boyish charm is there the whole time, but the crazy in his eyes is always there the whole time.
And just the way it's good cinematography and good, God was looking down. But when we get to sort of the bit towards the end, which I would say spoilers, but if you watch a movie club, you know what happened. When he gets stabbed and whatever, and he just goes to the mirror, does his hair back, and you get the beautiful streak, and then the little trickle just perfectly like down his nose and like thing is like, this is stage done. This has been faked. This is like. It was just amazing.
And, I feel like the first person we should shout out here. I want to heap as much praise on Demme as I can.
Yeah.
But Emax Fry is the writer.
Yes. I looked into this. I'm like, how the shit did this guy do Foxcatcher?
It's like he co-wrote Foxcatcher with Dan Futterman. He wrote an episode of Band of Brothers. And then he did like a few assorted movies that nobody remembers. And this is like this was like his first big script, and it's like a masterclass in so many things. First and foremost, tonal changes. Because it's like was somebody about to say something?
No, I was going to say.
I just want to be sure before I take off. The whole movie is like going down a rabbit hole, because it's like you could say there's a significant tonal change when Leota enters, but we're kind of going down a continuous rabbit hole the whole time. Like what he's doing with her is getting a little wilder and crazier as it goes, and then we get one hint of him in those newspaper articles that she has, but then still the gradualness of. Like, by the time we end up at the end, the final confrontation, there is a whole actual chain of events we can look at. Like, nothing really came from out of nowhere. There's a continuous chain of events if you go back and look, but it feels like we started in one place and we're on a different planet within less than 2 hours. Yeah, and tonal changes are one of the hardest things to master, I think.
Yeah. The way it sort of shift like from location to location and like It could be just other little bits, but there's just about enough of a sinew to sort of tie it all together to be somehow all these things are connected in a logical manner. You know, just the little tidbit of like befriending the girl at the motel sort of pool shop thing, which then becomes the key point into how he gets out of the situation he's stuck with in the diner.
And that's another thing is, on top of this being a masterclass in tone shifting, it's also a masterclass in setup and payoff. Because like you were just talking about, when Charlie's following them around and he's spying on them at the gas station, there's that one quick shot of Ray standing there surrounded by like 3 young girls. And it shows that he's like got that charm where he could just pick up anybody at any given time, and then that's what he uses on Tracy, the motel girl, which then leads to that. And there's so much, and we were talking about how the first half of the movie and the second half of the movie feel like they're on different planets, but there's so much that's set up in the first half that seems like it serves one purpose in the first half, but then it has an unexpected payoff later, like the journey that the handcuffs go through in this movie. It's like, but at first it's, she's being kinky and she's cuffing Charlie to the bed and it's a sexual thing. And then by the end, the handcuffs are a weapon for both of them. They're a weapon for Charlie when he's trying to strangle Ray, and then they're a weapon for Ray when he's pulling on them. And also the idea of confining Charlie to the sink for a while there. And it's like, there's a whole, like, you almost want to see the movie through the perspective of just the handcuffs, and it'd be a whole thing, like the water bottle and bullet train.
I mean, it just another thing I do want to credit is because I haven't really seen that much Melanie Griffith stuff, to be fair. I mean, I haven't even seen Stuart Little 2, and that was like that we thought was the end of her career, and then she sort of came back like 7 or 8 years later and has been doing stuff on and off for sort of the past 6-7 years or so.
I feel like Crazy in Alabama might be around the area where I felt like she started to disappear.
Was that after Milk Money and Pacific Heights?
Yeah, Crazy in Alabama, I think it's like maybe 2000 or 2001.
Let's have a quick check.
Oh yeah, and speaking of checks,
check, please.
We brought up the diner scene. The fact that the scene where they where she leaves Charlie with the check and then they have to run out seems like this, oh, that's a fun and playful thing. And then the fact that it comes back and that's how they end up abandoning Ray at the diner is using the exact same method.
And then we just break the fourth wall, and the waitress is now gonna rap to camera as the credits roll. Okay.
But even that is set up, but that's a whole other thing I want to go into. But before we leave the check thing, I did also want to bring up, and I think I may have mentioned this when we did the video for Dumb and Dumber back in the day. Yeah, the fact that Lloyd pulls the same check trick in Dumb and Dumber with Jeff Daniels with him. I've always wondered if because when Harry asked Lloyd, where did you come up with that? And Lloyd says, I saw it in a movie once. Did Lloyd see something?
Is that the inside joke?
Because he does say they caught up to him halfway down the road and slit his throat, and it's like, that's not how this movie ends, but this movie does end with a knife going into somebody, so yeah. It's pretty close.
I mean, it's loosely adapted enough. Like, yeah, I'll allow it. But it's just really. It's really strong in that it does feel like multiple sort of genres at once. It go sort of when it gets to the bedroom scene and whatever, it gets a little bit sort of like, okay, is this trying to go Basic Instinct and whatever? Because it goes more than sort of a standard sort of screwball comedy style thing would. Not even did you get to see that much tits in American Pie. and that's about as screwball comedy as you can get in that sort of style.
Yeah, the 80s were much more free.
Then we sort of transition over to pretty much to the, I don't know, the date night with Mom, with Peaches.
Yeah. And I love the way that progresses with like no conflict whatsoever, because it's the whole thing where it's they build up like it's this really big ruse, and then like it's not even like it's we find out that her mom knows it's a ruse the whole time. She just casually asks Charlie, "So who are you really?" But it's like we don't even see the first half of that conversation. We get to them in mid conversation, and they're just talking like, "Oh yeah, this was all bullshit, by the way," but everybody knew that.
But as long
it's like
as Peaches makes good food, that's what matters. That gets brought up like 6 times.
And I feel like it does say a lot about Audrey's character that like her mom is just that used to what her lifestyle is now. It's almost like she showed up at the door with Charlie, and it's like, well, I know this is a random guy off the street, but he's wearing a suit. He seems like a nice guy, and he's not Ray, so I'll cook some food for him.
Yeah. And then to the transition to the I'm trying to work out, it says like class of 76, but it's all sort of, the dress she wants is like very 50s, and obviously with the car that they've got, it sort of seems very 50s. So
I'm going to assume that's a an intentional thing to show like her being super conservative when we know what her actual lifestyle is, and how it's like, I guess we learned in the last scene that that's kind of the life she wanted anyway.
Yeah.
She just kind of fell into her wild life.
She fell into the wrong way. And then random woman shows up. And you immediately think something's going on, and that leads to Leota and everything. And at first I was like, why is this happening? Not realizing that she might be, you know, snitch of sorts. For Ray, who plays Ray.
Because they did a really good job of just making her look shady from the get-go. and that leads to a lot of questions like we have to assume that she didn't approach Charlie coincidentally. No. So that kind of raises the question of how long Ray has been staking her out. If it was just at the reunion or even before that.
And we never truly know what happened with how he got out, right?
Yeah, they're very cryptic about that.
Yeah. Never properly sort of explained.
I guess before we go on, brother, since it's been so long for you, what do you remember about it?
I didn't remember a whole lot at first, but I'm starting to remember the more scenes you talk about.
So because I would assume if at first I would like if this was any other movie, I'd almost say, oh, you haven't seen it in like a decade, you're fucked. But I feel like this is a movie that sticks. Like even if you just see it once, it's gonna stick in there. Something about it is gonna stick in there with you. Because I remember
the fact that Demme could get John Cale and Laurie Anderson like to do the sort of soundtrack for it, and then the sort of lead track of the thing is Burn, but obviously that's because of his Talking Heads links and the concert movies he did like around the same time, so that makes sense as to how he do that as a favor.
I got a whole rabbit hole to go down talking about the soundtrack. I've been prepared to have this conversation for like 15 years.
And then the boss of the investment bank company is the guy that plays the fucking Porn King in Boogie Nights, Robert Ridgely. Yeah. Like, oh, what? What's he doing here? And then of course the random John Waters cameo. Like,
how amazing is it? Because at first you would like he's in the movie for about 10 seconds.
yeah, and maybe longer, but yeah, in that region, it's a sort of
Let's
very short cameo.
we'll say it's 30 seconds. For 10 seconds, you think, wow, that's John Waters. That's a pretty distracting cameo. And for the last 20 seconds, it's, wow, John Waters, it's exactly like a car salesman. I buy that completely that John Waters was a car salesman at some point.
As soon as like the bribing, like how about Benjamin, and it's like, well, all right, and it's like he's just natural. What's the hell?
And speaking of director cameos, obviously John Sayles was the motorcycle cop, which is also delightfully random.
Yeah, just randomly bring that in, and then
this is almost like John Landis levels of director cameos.
And then, of course, I think there's like 3 different dogs that get credited at the end.
Yeah.
With their real names and whatever. And then, we've got the Texas Kid as the hitchhiking cowboy. And
this is
the Feelies being the Willies, because apparently they can't be the Feelies, just in case, we're breaking the fourth wall too much, even though the thing at the end.
Yeah, this is talking about the soundtrack is a whole rabbit hole I'm willing to go down, and I'm prepared to go down. And all those background characters is a rabbit hole I'm willing to go down, and I'm ready to go down.
Yeah, just randomly seeing Charles Napier just there as the angry chef when they wouldn't pay, and like, what's he doing in this as a cameo?
Yeah, I love that almost all the cameos in this movie have an opening credit.
Yeah. It's credit.
Yeah, I guess talking about the background people, one of the things that I think makes this movie so great and is I feel like
Hold on.
Demme trademark in certain movies. Like it's almost like they went to a location and they just let the camera linger on the people that actually lived there, and those people just end up in this movie. And it starts right away when we're just kind of eavesdropping on a conversation in the restaurant at the beginning. And it's like the way these real people make all of these feel like real places. Like even just like there's the Hangover cure guy who's here for like 10 seconds and stands out. There's Nelson drove from that like helps him. There's a girl that like wakes him up and asks if he's okay while he's staking out Ray and Audrey. And it's like these characters are just come and go, and they're just background characters. They might as well be extras, but yet they're like have these little moments that you remember. And it's like when he throws Audrey into the pool, there's that old couple there where the woman says like, "Oh, they look like a terrible couple," and that's the only time we see them. But just in general, what you mentioned dogs, the guy with the motorcycle with his dog on the back, like just that image stands out, and they're just basically extras. And I think it's the way Demme really focuses on the surroundings of a scene. Like a couple of scenes that especially come to mind are the motel, Ray's motel, the really run down one in like the really bad part of town. And it's like, there's so many details in that one set. There's the fire in the background. There's the motorcyclists. There's and it's the way he decides to take them in also, where we get that exterior shot of the motel and we see the whole thing while they go to the door, and then there's the interior scene in the motel where things are getting out of hand, and then right in the middle of things getting out of hand, we just cut back to another exterior shot for a while.
Yeah,
and then it goes back to everything's calmed down.
Just randomly runs sort of across the shot and into sort of one of the doors, but not the door that they were in. It was like, are we trying to emphasize that it's CD?
I think I love the way Demme embraces his backgrounds and his surroundings. And there's also because there's even like the guys rapping outside of the gas station. Like they're just these little background things that add flavor to the scenes, and it's like you're pretty sure those people were already there when they started filming. That's the vibe you get. And that's apparent through the whole thing, and that's why I say that I feel like the end credit sequence is kind of set up, because her just like singing on the sidewalk feels like any other character we've seen already. There's the guy playing harmonica by the tree outside of the other hotel that we just linger on for a second.
And the hitchhikers that just randomly get in the car and keep doing world thing and all that.
Another thing that feels like Dumb and Dumber took something from it. Actually, I want to say the Fairleys were really inspired by this movie, because the scene where Ray confronts Audrey in the convenience store, and he says the line, "You shouldn't have quit me, baby," and that's exactly what Rob Moran says to Vanessa Angel in Kingpin, in exactly that tone. It's like the Fairley brothers have definitely seen and taken from this movie. And I guess it's worth bringing up. This movie just kind of has that effect. Like, I really want to know, like, when I watched the Criterion Closet video with the Safdie brothers and I saw that this was in Josh Safdie's bag, it's like, I'm wondering if or when they've borrowed from it. And the thing about it is, this might sound like an exaggeration, but like I said, this has been a favorite movie of mine for a long time. If I have 15 or 16 completed scripts that I've written, if you look at 10 of those scripts, you'll probably find something I lifted from Something Wild. So either something small or something real. Like, there's like that Western I talked about that I wrote. The whole structure of my Western is a young couple falls in love, and then a seedy person from the girl's past comes in midway through the movie and causes havoc. And the originally not people of this world have to kind of choose to go into that world to confront this person. That's literally Something Wild. I just straight up lifted this movie and made it a Western, essentially, without even realizing it. It was only after the fact I was like, oh. And like I said, sometimes there's small details here that you'll find. There's literally a shot in this movie that I put in a script of mine, like just one frame. And it's like this movie of all movies, you would think it on its surface, it just looks like, oh, it's another, like if you just see the original cover, which is just Daniels and Griffith on the cover and he has the handcuffs on him and it's like written in hearts. It's like, oh, it's some romantic comedy. And it's like, it's crazy how much is hiding in this movie before you actually watch it.
Well, you said earlier the start of the movie feels like a road trip movie, right?
Yeah.
What are most of the Farrelly Brothers movies centered on?
Yeah.
A road trip with dire consequences on the other side.
Yeah. Dumb and Dumber's a road trip movie.
Hi there, greatest beer run ever. I think it might be the same.
But you've got, because you've got Dumb and Dumber, which once they get off the road and the goofiness ends, it's a kidnap plot. You've got Me, Myself, and Irene, where you have Peter Jenkins being a corrupt cop at the end of the road. Kingpin, we got Ernie McCracken waiting on the other end, which isn't Ray Liotta, but for that movie, he might as well be. And then you've got There's Something About Mary. It's one of the shortest parts of the movies, but still the road trip has consequences.
Yeah, I was going to say the road trip's mostly off screen, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Green Book is a road trip movie with consequences.
I love so much that they'll continue the trend. It's like I want to find out what other directors were inspired by this movie, because there's got to be a lot. And like I said, even if it's in subtle ways, you can see this movie in a lot of movies and in a lot of directors.
Do you think it's one of those cases too where like something like this movie that does the tonal shift so well resulted in other movies that tried to emulate it that kind of fell on its face?
I never even thought about it that way, but that's the case, because that's exactly what happens whenever something is a masterclass in something. Is people immediately say, "Oh, I can do that in my." I guess I'm Exhibit A. It's like, "Oh, I can do that in mine." Yeah, and like we were saying, tonal shifts are really, really hard to execute, especially when they're this drastic. And it's like they are never pulled off as perfectly as this movie does, I don't think.
The only thing that I could think comes close, and I don't have as much knowledge of movies as you do, but the only thing I could think of that comes close to pulling it off well is From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, my two go-tos are From Dusk Till Dawn and Barton Fink.
Yeah, Barton Fink's a good one for that category too.
Yeah.
Yeah, come to think of it, that's starting to piss me off. This movie is like basically the golden example, but anytime like people are saying like, what are movies that have drastic turns in the middle, people always say From Dusk Till Dawn, and there's maybe a couple thrown out here or there. You never hear this movie mentioned, and that's kind of the problem too, is I don't know, this movie has inspired so many other things. I'm really not sure how many people have seen this, which is why I was especially so enthusiastic about doing it as one of these. Like when Ashley, when you just said this is the first time you'd seen it, it was like that's the most exciting thing.
Yeah,
And I think
it does help
Josie said
when,
yesterday.
like, the DVD release sort of really doesn't exist. I mean, the fact that it only had a DVD release 20 years ago in America, probably.
The only physical
probably would have been import only over here. I'd have thought.
Yeah, before the Criterion release, I'd only ever seen 2 physical copies of Something Wild in my life. There was the one at the video store, which is how I first saw it, and my mom has it. Those are before the Criterion release, those are the only 2 physical copies I ever knew of this movie in existence, and I looked for it everywhere, and you could never find it. So thank Christ Criterion picked it up. That's why Criterion is so incredibly valuable, by the way, if you hadn't figured it out.
Oh, wow.
It's not even streaming anywhere for free, and a lot of big movies are somewhere.
Yeah, it's like I could have sworn it was on Tubi, and then of course, right before I picked it for this week, it went off. So that's.
I was thinking at one point it was on HBO Max.
That would make sense too. Yeah, especially since the Criterion Channel and HBO Max kind of, I don't know if they do now, but at one point they crossed over a lot.
Then again, of course, because it was Orion, which is MGM, whether that means it'll actually show up on Amazon soon, once they get all that sorted.
I think it was on Amazon Prime at one point too, because I remember seeing it go by because the poster that you described was familiar.
So turns out it is actually on like European region Blu-ray. But I wasn't going to pay $17.99 for it. But it's probably going to be one I consider, considering the DVD in our said region is apparently £175. So about 10 times as much.
So is my mom sitting on a gold mine having that DVD?
Well, looking at Amazon lists the. Wait, no, that's the American one that's 175, but that might be because of like shipping over here. I don't know. The actual 15 certificate UK branded one, yeah, that's in PAL, so that's definitely not from America. That's about £16. So it costs the same to buy a DVD with the, as we mentioned yesterday, the special features of interactive menu. Because that's what MGM had always in those early years. It's the same to buy, the DVD from 20 years ago as the Blu-ray from 10 years ago. Although I don't even know whether it came out here in 2011. No, here it was 2018. We had to wait 7 years. So for us, it's like relatively new, to some extent. Oh, I'm triggered. The cover art of The Thing was done by Sam Smith. I'm hoping it's not that one. Damn it.
AJ, the next time we go to the exchange, we'll have to pay attention to see if they have a copy and what they're selling it for, because I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're kind of a good gauge about what's hard to find and what isn't based on their prices.
Mm-hmm.
Going through the.
Like, I think when I picked up Shock Treatment, it was like $10, but I'd never seen it anywhere else.
Going through some of the comments, Josephine says, "Hey Popcast team, watched this movie yesterday. It sure was something wild." In brackets, in all caps, literally. Probably my favorite Melanie Griffith's performance next to Working Girl. I'd say that's probably fair. I mean,
Yeah,
Working Girl's the
I
one
would
that got
I would
all
put
the
this
sort
up.
of award
I would put this
nominations.
at the top. What was that last thing?
That Working Girl was the one that got all the award nominations. To be fair, there were some Golden Globe nominations for the other one. For Something Wild, which never actually came to anything. I can't remember what would have won that year. Actually, I'll probably have to have a look on Wikipedia.
Yeah, cause I want to say Griffith, Daniels, and Liotta all got Globe nominations, didn't they?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
Losing out to Sissy Spacek for Crimes of the Heart on Actress. Paul Hogan for Crocodile Dundee. Okay. And then, of course, because of the supporting not getting split, Tom Berenger for Platoon.
Okay. I mean, obviously Liotta would be my choice, but Berenger's a good pick too, so I'm not pissed, I guess.
We also had Michael Caine for Hannah and Her Sisters, which was a strong performance, and then Hopper for both Hoosiers and Blue Velvet.
Yeah, this was Hopper's year too. That's right. This was a great year for Psychos. Because Berenger's up there too.
Spencer asks for our favourite Jonathan Demme. Having now seen this, it's up there. I would still probably give the edge to Silence of the Lambs, but I do find it slightly stronger than Philadelphia. I would say. So, yeah, it's up there with, like, to me, one of his best.
I'm in love with Silence of the Lambs. Always have been, always will be.
Yeah, this one's at the top for me, but like my brother just said, Silence of the Lambs is golden.
And I also love Married to the Mob.
You also love Philadelphia. You're just a Demme fan in general, because you also took to His Manchurian Candidate, didn't you?
Yeah, I just rewatched it a few months ago.
I thought, it's annoying because I think that the original, it's very good. I don't think it's as good as the original, but for a modern interpretation, it is actually, pretty solid. I can't say that about The Truth About Charlie. Charade's much better.
Well, and in case you hadn't figured it out, the Versus is coming soon. So, very, very.
But yeah.
You know what's interesting about the Demme Manchurian Candidate is Anthony Mackie is in it, and literally he's best friends with the Winter Soldier, who's essentially the assassin.
It unofficially started there in a parallel universe. It's weird though that he started from a Roger Corman background. Doing sort of like Caged Heat and Crazy Mama, so the sort of blaxploitation style stuff to some extent.
It's insane. It's insane how many people Corman started, and isn't there a whole documentary about that?
Certainly about Corman stuff, yeah. And then just reading up about Melvin and Howard. Never heard of it, but just because of the fact that it's the story is just weird about this guy getting 156 billion in a will or something. I might want
That's
to track
actually
that down.
I forgot that was Demme. That's a great movie, and it's the movie Mary Morgan won her Oscar for.
And maybe we should start putting Demme in the conversation for his range of what he could do, because if you think of the main five that we mentioned, Something Wild, Married to the Mob, Silence of the Lambs, Philadelphia, and I can't remember, The Manchurian Candidate, all five completely different movies.
Yeah, Melvin Howard is certainly in there also. Because Melvin Howard's pretty much just a straight comedy, as far as I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how has he is totally not gotten his due. I mean, yeah, Signs of the Lambs, I know, but
that's the only Oscar
as far as like his whole career.
That's the only Oscar that Demme got.
Yeah.
In terms of directing.
And it's considered one of the best movies of all time. But still, when you look at like his whole career, it still feels like it's unsung in a way.
New York film critics gave him Best Director for Melvin and Howard. But other than that and Silence of the Lambs, he was never nominated or won at anything. Obviously, Philadelphia, got Best Picture.
With the acting nominations, he obviously knows how to pull good performances out of his actors too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember when it first came out, Manchurian, even though it didn't go anywhere, Manchurian Candidate had a lot of buzz when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gone around.
Mm-hmm.
New World, which is obviously, I don't know what Studio Corman stuff would be now, who owns the rights to it. But, Fighting Mad was Fox. Handle with Care was Paramount. And he only went back to Paramount for Manchurian Candidate, so that shows you everything. United Artists for Last Embrace. Universal for Melvin and Howard. Warner Brothers for Swing Shift. Orion Pictures for a bunch of the stuff, including Silence of the Lambs. TriStar for Philadelphia. Sony Pictures, I guess, sort of, well, not TriStar, but Sony Pictures for Rachel Getting Married and Ricky and the Flash. He did that film for Amazon like a decade ago. A Master Builder, from what it says here. So it's like, and then technically Disney with Buena Vista for Beloved. So he's one of the very few people that's worked at every major studio that probably is out there right now. Which probably goes to show you how much, he was in demand and wasn't sort of committing to sort of one company or the other.
Oh man, now that you're mentioning like the major movie studios and we made the connection, I would kill to see like what it would look like if like Jonathan Demme directed Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
It'd probably be slightly more down than it is now, but slightly. While we're on the topic, one thing I was going to say was that it sucks that he didn't become like a household name, but I love that as we've been talking about it, it's clear he had the industry respect for sure, like through and through.
Yeah.
And I feel like since we're talking about him and praising him, this would be a good time to go down the soundtrack rabbit hole, because that was one of his trademarks throughout his career, was his picking soundtracks. And it's not just the song choices and that the songs are good. It's the way, by the way, the credits do roll kind of slowly, but I was kind of like trying to time it. I want to say it's nearly 2 minutes. 2 full minutes of the credits rolling. What was that?
2 full minutes. You were going a bit glitchy. I don't know whether that's on my end.
Yeah, you're freezing off and on.
2 full minutes of credits before something.
Like I said, the credits are kind of slow, but I was trying to time it, and it appears that 2 full minutes of the credits rolling is the soundtrack list. And that's a long time for a credit roll to be on one thing. But
Yeah.
it's not just the songs that he chooses, it's how they're utilized is extremely important. Because this isn't like this has a massive soundtrack list, but this is not or doing Suicide Squad. This is not this isn't fucking Craig Gillespie, where it's just like, oh, there's just put constant music on the background. First off, a lot of the music in this movie coming from a radio or something, and I really love the way they do that. It's like there's the moment when he's robbing the gas station, and he says, "Here, let me turn the radio on for you," and the song starts playing from the car radio. And then they go into the convenience store, and the convenience store clerk is listening to that same station on a radio from behind the counter. So the song never stops in the scene. And it's like that's how you do a constant soundtrack. That's just one thing. There's also like background stuff, like when and you can hear the people singing in the church behind him, just becomes part of the sound of the scene. And there's also transitions, like not to mention the reunion band is a whole soundtrack in themselves for that whole time. But one of the real genius moments in the way the soundtrack is used is, like I said, somebody like Craig Gillespie just plays song after song after song after song, whether it fits or not. And just from scene to scene to scene, there's just a song playing for no goddamn reason. But here, it's like, how do you transition from one scene to another where each scene is playing a different song? So there's the moment where they're the ones being pursued by Ray towards the end when they're going back to New York or going back to the city, and it's playing a song, and then the transition is a semi truck driving by, and they use that sound, and that's the only sound between that song going into another song that's in another scene. And it's like the way he's able to piece the soundtrack together is the real beautiful part of it. And I can't praise that enough.
Yeah, just
that's how you do it.
Looking through the list, the Feelies like doing I'm a Believer, but then also Fame. It's like, okay, so we're jumping from 60s to 80s. And then of course the World thing cover, but then of course the original Trogs version's also used as well. Random broadcast of Fine Young Cannibals doing a cover of Buzzcocks Ever Fallen in Love with Someone You Shouldn't Have Fallen in Love With, which I didn't know existed. I'm now pleased to know that exists. Just some UB40, some Jimmy Cliff, Temptation by New Order, and all I was thinking of was Train Spotting.
Yeah, well, I do love the Jimmy Cliff song at the end too. And there's also something I forgot to mention about the band was and about the way they utilize it is I love how when Ray's introduced and like everybody's really happy and dancing, and then it's like when the song slows down and the lights go down is when Ray appears, and it's like the whole environment knows he's around. It's like it sounds sinister.
That's why Jerry Harrison sang Man with a Gun. Because he had a gun. Interesting note, number 62 in the Australian charts, that soundtrack album got. It actually charted. Hell yeah. Have a quick look at the other comments. Josephine says, probably my favourite Melanie Griffith performance next to Working Girl. Oh, I mentioned that one. When Ray's character went crazy, I said to myself, he could live in the universe of Silence of the Lambs. I mean, sort of didn't he? Except it was Ridley Scott. To some extent.
Oh, yeah.
Melanie Griffith's character sure is a maniac pixie dream girl. I was sort of taken aback when I saw the blonde hair, to be fair. I was like, oh, it's one of them, is it? It's one of those. I actually kind of like
how kind of believable the characters are, despite the concept of the movie. Because because the first thing you might ask if you were watching a normal movie would be, why would somebody like her be immediately attracted to somebody like him? Like, what could it possibly be? But then it's like, you watch the very opening. Once again, talking about this script being an absolute masterclass. When you think about the image of Charles Driggs sitting at this restaurant by himself, he looks very well off. He looks like young Jeff Daniels. He's wearing a suit. He's got an umbrella, for God's sake. And then you see him get this very small check that's probably $5 worth of food. And he looks around and pockets it despite looking how well off he does. That sounds like a writing prompt in a writing class. Like, what is this guy's deal and where does it go from here? Sounds like a writing prompt. And it's like, if she were to see that out of the corner of her eye, it's like, yeah, I could see where she'd go, oh, I wonder what this guy's deal is. Let's find out. And of course, she's got the personality that she will just seek out whatever and whoever. So yeah, I kind of I mean, because when I hear Manic Pixie Dream Girl, I feel like it's a criticism to show that it's a character that would never exist in real life and has no real sort of motivations. But I do feel like, especially as we go on, that she definitely becomes, phrasing here, fleshed out in more ways than one, I guess. It's, yeah.
Fun trivia: the two old ladies in the resale shop are actually the mothers of Demme and David Byrne. That was they had a weird sort of act, like they actually belonged, like they were professionals, not just they're the mums of the people. The script found its way into the hands of Demme while Fry was still in film school, and Demme committed to it within 24 hours of reading it. That's
fucking nuts that he was still in film school when he wrote this.
Audrey's Lulu persona was loosely based on the silent film era actress Louise Brooks. Yeah, I'd say that makes sense.
Yeah, because I believe Louise Brooks' look was also the inspiration for Mia Wallace. It was like a whole thing there for a while.
Chris Isaac was up for the role of Ray, but dropped out because he was finishing his second album. And that's why Ray...
That makes more sense that he's in Lions now.
First movie in which John Waters appears without counting his uncredited voice roles in Mondo Trasho and Pink Flamingos. Since then, he's been more prolific as an actor in projects of other people than as a director of his own films. Having trouble hearing you. Is my mic low? No, I'm just not talking loud enough. Maybe. Is that better? If I get closer? That's the problem. I can't have sort of a mouth. I can't have a microphone directly in front of my mouth because then it just is distracting. So I'll just speak up. I don't want to speak up because then it gets oversensitive and picks up the mic. I have to put on the headphones, and in this hot weather, my ears will burn. Josephine says, "Love Married to the Mob." Kevin Kline was considered for the role of Charlie. I mean, if it worked, it wasn't really the same thing with Wanda, but that's sort of a very similar style, sort of caper style thing to some extent. Okay, it's a different role for him. But I think that...
Yeah, I can kind of see it, but I feel like he's... then again, this would have been before Wanda, so I'm not sure. But yeah. I was going to say that it feel like Daniels feels like he's so naturally straight laced, like that kind of type, that it seems more he has something he has to break through to find a wild side to himself. Whereas Kline, like I said, though, this was. If Wanda hadn't come out yet, I don't know that you would say it's really easy to buy that Kline has a wild side.
Yeah. Johnny Marr at the Smiths was one of the motorcycle riders, apparently. I don't know in which bit. Whether that was the rough part of town or just one of the other drivers that was about.
Yeah, so that could be anything.
Napier, who plays the Irate chef, also played Lieutenant Boyle in Silence of the Lambs, which was produced by Kenneth Utt, who played Dad at Mum and Dad's restaurant.
Yeah.
It's all connected. Yeah, I completely missed that bit when where Ray robs the convenience store. The cashier had a talking head shirt on.
Yeah.
Daniels versus Leota Face Off. What the hell? So it's Dumb and Dumber or Operation Dumbo Drop. I've never heard of the other one. Is that supposed to be like infamous?
Oh, you haven't? Isn't it a Disney movie or something?
Isn't that the one with Tip Tucker?
That's Larger Than Life. And yeah, I confuse those as well sometimes. Operation Dumbo Drop is the one with like Dennis Leary and Danny Glover, I think.
Danny Glover, yeah.
Yeah.
And Dougie
And
Doug.
I can't remember.
So good they named him twice.
I was gonna say I've seen Operation Dumbo Drop, but I don't remember. I was gonna say I don't remember what it's about, but I'm pretty sure the title is pretty self-explanatory. It has something to do with like the military and an elephant, but it's like family friendly.
And Vietnam. Wow. Yeah. What? It was Polygram and Interscope, but Disney distributed it. So I guess it's on Disney Plus. But no,
I'm almost positive I've seen it hanging out on Disney Plus.
I like the fact that it says it's got a cinema score at the time of A-, which is impressive. A critical response of 31% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's one of those films, maybe, but like the fact that I haven't heard anything about it since, and it's not like one of those hidden gems.
I feel like it's telling. It's a Disney movie about the military and an elephant, which should absolutely stand out. But yet, I know I've seen it and remember nothing. I feel like that's. It's like that should stick. Like we were talking, Larger Than Life would be the same kind of thing, but Matthew McConaughey made it memorable. So.
Broy mentions it's odd the Criterion only comes with 2 supplements, which is their word for bonus features, which is the Demme interview and the Max Fry interview. I thought there was, well, I mean, there's the little booklet that comes with it as well, I think, isn't there?
Yeah. It's got a whole essay in it.
And it's a full-on remaster from the digital negative that the cinematographer was on, supporting. So.
Yeah, supervised by the DP and approved by Demme.
I went to the wrong tab. I was trying to look for something wild, and I'm still getting trapped into the Operation Dumbo Drop. Damn it! 101 Dalmatians or Field of Dreams? Field of Dreams?
Daniel's 101 Dalmatians.
I know, but like that was a cool best 101 Dalmatians. It's good, but it's compared to live action remakes of stuff in previous times. Damn you, Jon Favreau! It's not bad. Yeah, Bryce saying that Fry would later co-write that with Dan Futterman on Foxcatcher.
Oh my god.
That's 2 good blooming bookmarks, though. You start with something wild, and you end possibly with Foxcatcher, unless he's working on other stuff now.
I just kind of had an epiphany, and Field of Dreams, as different as they seem, kind of have similar last shots. Where they have a new area for themselves, and there's a lot more living things here now, and the camera's pulling up. It's like the same thing.
Arachnophobia or Blow?
Arachnophobia is a lot more fun. Blow's kind of a drag as far as like it's a downer.
They're also sort of like two sort of different genres anyway. It's hard to sort of compare them. I might give the edge to Blow, but I think Arachnophobia's gone from like an average film to a good film. It's sort of matured over time. Maybe because we had eight-legged freaks, and it's like, no, Arachnophobia's how you do it. Bryce says, on my Criterion shelf since the purchases last month, it just so happens Silence of the Lambs and Something Wild are next to each other because that's how it goes alphabetically in the Criterion collection. That's
I love
brilliant.
when it happens.
Pleasantville or Wild Hogs? Josephine continues on the either or. Pleasantville.
This is really. Do you guys know what I'm doing? Pleasantville is also gonna have a video soon.
I mean, Wild Hogs has John C. McGinley, though.
Yeah.
But it's Wild Hogs.
I was watching a McGinley interview the other day, and he was being so serious about his. He takes the craft so seriously, and he's so interesting to listen to. And I swear to God, Wild Hogs is the first thing I think of, even before Scrubs. I don't know why.
And then my favorite. Oh, go ahead.
I've also heard that John C. McGinley is a super nice guy, which just makes me feel right with the world.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. You don't think he'd be sort of like, you know, a bitch to work with or something like that sort of thing.
Like more like an Edward Norton type.
Yeah. Josephine finishes off with my favorite Martian or Heartbreakers. Which one was Heartbreakers?
I would say Heartbreakers because I feel like I tried to watch My Favorite Martian recently and didn't get very far, but there's nostalgic 90s movies, like their quality to me like comes and goes. Like sometimes I won't even be able to get into them, and other times it's like I can't get enough of them. It just depends on the mood.
I'm trying to work out what I'm getting Heartbreakers confused with. There's a film that came out like maybe a couple of years later that was very similar. Like a younger woman and an older woman sort of battling sort of thing. I mean, okay, they're sort of, you know, con artists team, but it's just the poster, it just seems like that style of poster. I can't remember. I'd probably give the edge on that one personally to My Favorite Martian. Fun fact, Jeff Daniels was in My Favorite Martian and The Martian. Can we get him in any other Martian films?
I never thought about. I just rewatched The Martian the other day too, because The Martian's a movie I can't get enough of.
Does it still
I never put that together.
And or musical though?
I guess I should probably mention. I still have like half of a page of notes. I wanted to bring up.
Well,
it feels like we've gone through the whole thing, but there's so many intricate details here.
I'll go through some more of the comments before we get to that. So, yeah, Bryce says the handcuffs are the props of the movie. They're even on the Criterion cover, which is fair. And apparently Sister Carol has connection with Demme, not just through this film, but she was in Married to the Mob. She was in Rachel Getting Married, and some of her music actually features in Ricky and the Flash. That's a long-term link.
Yeah. It's so weird to me that Ricky and the Flash is a Demme movie. I still can't get my head around that, because it would have been is it technically his last as far as like narrative movies?
Yes, because the other one would have been the Justin Timberlake concert thing that he did. So I'm trying to get rid of the porn bot. Hi, Pornbot. Bye, Pornbot. Yeah, Josephine bringing up Melanie Griffiths being the voice of Margallo in Stuart Little 2. Anyone here seen Night Moves from Arthur Penn that Melanie Griffiths in? Personally, no.
I do not believe I have.
We found something he hasn't seen. Get the klaxon.
That is, I think Hackman's also in that, maybe?
No, yeah, that
I
rings
saw-
a bell.
I saw Kelly Reichardt's movie with the same name, but I have not seen the other one.
Yeah.
That was the name of the Kelly Reichardt movie, right? The Environmentalist with Jesse Eisenberg. I think was also called Night Moves.
Thoughts on De Palma's Body Double, which is another Melanie Griffith film.
I only really remember it for basically being a softcore porn and having the guy from Nightmare on Elm Street 3 in it. Craig Wilson, that's his name. Yeah. I need to revisit a lot of De Palma. I may have to have just like a De Palma marathon soon or something.
As long as Phantom of the
As crazy as
Paradise is in
that
there,
thing.
I approve. I approve. Just like. Also, I didn't realize like Griffith was married to Banderas, Don Johnson twice, Stephen Bauer of Scarface fame, and I mean Dakota's her daughter, and Tippi Hedren was her mother. Like, it's Judy Garland and Liza Minnelli all over again. Why they all have different names? Why am I confused? Wow. Also, you get Bri brings up the Sales and Waters cameos. Have you ever seen Milk Money? Nope.
Yeah.
I'll just say nope.
Any thoughts, brother? You brought up Milk Money first. It's a bizarre ass movie.
If I remember correctly, though, it's where we got Malcolm McDowell saying the salt.
That's what's funny is that movie's so bizarre. I always forget about the Malcolm McDowell subplot.
Does that make pink flamingos look normal?
Well, it's
nearly.
Melanie Griffith plays a prostitute that is hired by children because they want to see tits for the first time, and it's played up as like a sweet coming of age movie. It's really, really weird.
And one of the kids' dads is Ed Harris. And there's a scene where she wants to talk to Ed Harris, but she wants him to listen, so she makes him take his pants off. And Ed Harris just does it with no questions asked. Well, no, I think he asks one question, and then he just does it. I believe his one question is, why do I need to take my pants off?
I mean, then again, 90s era Melanie Griffith asks you to take your pants off. Would you ask a lot of questions either?
Oh, now looking into it, it's produced by Kathleen Kennedy. That explains everything.
Also, Milk Money filmed in Pittsburgh.
There we go. Another one to add to the list. It'd be cool if PTA did a crime rom-com in the vein of Something Wild or Married to the Mob, since that he's a major Demme fan. I mean, to some extent, the closest thing I could say where he's done that is maybe Inherent Vice.
I was going to say it would be a combination of Licorice Pizza and the final act of Boogie Nights. Because Boogie Nights is kind of another one of those movies that the turn is really massive.
I blame William H. Macy.
You went there because
I blame
my
William
first
H.
thought
Macy
was,
and his gun. And then we just
My-
cut
my-
80s.
My first thought when you mentioned PTA doing like a crime rom-com, I thought of maybe like an artsier version of True Romance.
Yeah, the ensemble would definitely be there.
And Bryce says, I didn't know the other Something Wild from 61 is also in the Criterion Collection.
Yeah.
Josephine says the Mahatela Queens who sing the Mazani Wahipi song are from South Africa. Big Youth who sings the Feel It song from the films from Jamaica and still around. Temptation by New Order is one of, if not my favourite songs of all time. So you must have Train Spotting on loop. Well, the confusing thing is there's also a different Temptation used in that film. There's two different Temptations in it. Which version of I'm a Believer do you prefer? The version in this or the version in Shrek? Oh, I'm trying to think. There is another one and I'm trying to think which film I'm trying to remember it from. If I had to choose between the two, probably Shrek. It was just at that right point.
I said a lot of songs around Shrek's time kind of had this similar vibe to them that I don't really care for. So we're like, all songs in the 2001 area kind of sound the same now. They didn't at the time, but they do now.
Apparently it was in the home video version of Blood Simple. Because of licensing issues, it's now just the Four Tops same old song in the director's cut edition. So the monkeys were in Blood Simple. It's just you'll never see it unless somebody's probably put it on archive.org in the intended version. And then there was the random Italian version in House of Jared Leto from last year. For whatever reason. Bryce says, is it just me or do I have a crush on Audrey? No.
Yeah, it's not just you.
No.
You're good.
Audrey's
you're
good.
you're among friends.
And Brian mentions the Feelies is the Willies. Which one's Big Willie? That's what we need to know. Daniel's Griffith and Leo were all nominated for Golden Globe. Josephine says, with his obvious interest in the crime genre, I'd like to see Vince Gilligan doing sort of something in the vein like this. I mean,
he kind of tried it with Home Fries, and it didn't work.
I mean, to some extent, and
Home
Josephine's
Fries
the only
is a
one.
weird damn movie.
Josephine's the only one that can attest to this because she's caught up on Better Call Saul. But I'd say to some extent, Saul's relationship with the female lawyer that I've drawn a blink on. I've drawn a blink on. Take a shot. Drawn a blank on.
I want to say, is it Kim Wexley you're talking about? Ray Seahorn?
Yeah, Kim. Yeah. That relationship. There's, sort of things that happen sort of when they're trying to get the way it built to sort of the mid-season finale in the final season does feel sort of caperish when certain things happen. Fun fact, Jeff Daniels has been married to his high school sweetheart since 1979. Good. I'd like to see people with long marriages not get divorced. We've got enough Burton and Taylors, damn it.
Well, I'm glad Jeff Daniels isn't living like a real life Squid and the Whale situation.
Yeah. God, after Squid and the Whale, Flyaway Home is so awkward now, man.
Josephine makes a good point. I mean, she says it may be a stretch as far as comparisons. But I certainly was thinking about it in terms of like the twist or the shift. Bong Joon-ho in Parasite, to some extent, you know, when we get the sort of revelation of the room under the house.
Yeah, that definitely counts as a sudden left turn movie.
That said, I could also see director Bong do a crime rom-com too.
I do think eventually I could see Bong Joon-ho breaking into an American style audience with like an American movie.
To be fair, I do feel like the only person that's really done that sort of thing is Danny Boyle. Because I think Danny's pretty much done every genre bar Western, right?
Is Snowpiercer considered American? It's English language, mostly.
I would
probably,
say
but
so,
I think Parasite would help the next one be bigger. Like, I know Snowpiercer was big enough that it got a series out of it, but
I mean, as it stands, it's still the only Western language one he's done, right? Because Memories of Murder wouldn't have been. Yeah, all his other stuff would have been Korean language, so Snowpiercer is only sort of Western one as it stands. We'll have to see what happens. He normally makes films every 3 or 4 years, so we're getting on the verge of where's your new film, son?
There's Okja also had a lot of English language in it.
Yeah, but I don't think it was fully. What was the film that felt very much like Snowpiercer with Kingsley? Trans-Siberian?
Yeah.
I get them slightly confused from time to time. Oh, Josephine said I had to rent the film on YouTube for Christ's sake. I guess that's in terms of the availability of it. Yeah, it's like even in the UK, it was like, do I purchase it for a tenner, or do I find other means that just so happen to be the Criterion Collection version? Thanks, other means.
I certainly hope it was worth the price. I would certainly think so.
Yeah.
But
I think YouTube movies are what, $3.99.
Yeah, luckily because I've got voucher codes that should have expired 5 years ago that are still somehow valid. I probably could have got it for 87 pence, but I sort of don't want to rent it. I want to own it. And at $9.99, no. Eventually it will come in the sale and be $3.99 or $4.99. Then probably yes. Because or the Blu-ray, which I might get around to. Bryce says in my personal Criterion 80s movies nominations, I would have it in for picture, director, Daniels, Griffith, and original screenplay. Not with supporting. Feel free to sort of, comment if you want on that, Bryce.
I was getting ready to say, oh my god, I can't believe me and Brian really agreed on something finally, and then it's like, wait a minute, where the fuck is Leota?
Ironically, I prefer watching Something Wild over Silence of the Lambs. There you go.
I've watched both countless times. Something Wild's the one I'm probably more prone to go, but I don't know this actually.
Well, Silence of the Lambs is kind of a downer.
For some reason, I guess it's because I'm so to it at this point because I've seen it so many times, but like.
So yeah, you actually do match up because Bride does say I do like both, but I prefer Something Wild. So you may disagree on some things, but Something Wild is not something. But can I get any more words of using something? Something in the way she moves. That should have been in the soundtrack.
You might say you and him agreeing is something of a wild event.
I thought that you really just condensed that and said me and him agreeing is something wild, but I thought that you made it a whole sentence.
I didn't want to make it too obvious.
Would have been too on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, but broken noses are cool. Um,
The way it cut out there, it sounded like you said two on the nose.
maybe I was being trendy. Getting one of those, you know. It's like my generation when Roger Daltrey randomly stutters, just because I get around. Like, you just did that to drag it out, didn't you, Roger? And he's like, yeah. Fun fact: New Order's it also features in Bizarre Love, or in Married to the Mob, with Bizarre Love Triangle showing up in there. So again, he likes his New Order. Where's Blue Monday, damn it? And please say it's the original Blue Monday, not the 90s, like, weird shit. I know next Monday's the 15th, and I know I've got to look at the November lineup for a few minutes for a reaction, and then go downtown for the Grand Slam Parade, which is coming back after a couple of years of absence, to welcome the teams for the Little League World Series and do a vlog on it. Wow, that's, like, a lot. Just, like, the fact that the Little League World Series is back, considering all I heard about the issues with that a few years back. I guess because this is getting in as well. Binaural Dean, hello. I guess we're getting into the... I'll leave that comment till the end, Binaural Dean, because it's got nothing to do with what we're talking about. Bry mentions I did not like Squid at the Whale, but Okja is a masterpiece. There you go. Right, before we get to the Binaural Dean's not related to this thing, do you want to go through some of the rest of your notes, AJ?
Yeah, they're mostly Ray related. So what I really love about that, we were talking about before about how about how cryptic they are about how he got out of prison, and I love that there's so many subtle things about him that aren't like out explained. We just kind of have to watch them play out. Like how, like one of the first things is apparently he has some history with Peg, that girl, at the really timid girl at the reunion. But we don't. She apparently seems to know what he's about, but we have no idea how they're connected or how they know each other.
Yeah, I
And
completely
I like
forgot
the
that bit
mystery
where
around
it's
that.
like, trouble's coming. I'm like, okay.
And I love the way that we don't realize in the moment until much later, like the end later, that Ray is constantly taking stuff in. Where when Audrey and Irene go into the convenience store and it's just Ray and Charlie in the car, and Charlie says, yeah, I'm from Stony Brook. And Ray just kind of shrugs, like, where the hell is that? I don't know. And then they just talk about something else. And then he literally remembers that one little piece of information, and that's how he ends up at the climax. Is that piece of information that it looks like he shrugged off, he, like, noted.
And then even with Ray sort of like change from like saying, you know, that's a piece of like she'll fuck you up sort of thing, and Daniels is just like, there's no need to talk about that, and sort of because he realizes he can't reveal sort of his true intentions until like a few minutes later when it's all gonna go shit that hits the fan, he sort of like retracts in on himself. Like the hood sort of comes back up, like, okay.
Yeah, because I love how it's like when he says, like, you know, how long have you been married? Which obviously, because he never got divorce papers, he knows they're not actually married, and he knows her enough that he probably knows that she just met him. But it's like the way he dives into it and makes Charlie lie and says, like, so, like, you know, how long has it been and what's she really like? But I love a detail here that it took me forever to notice was it's interesting how good of a liar Charlie is, because as soon as he says, when did you guys get married? He immediately has an answer. Oh, somewhere around September. And then it's like, why would he have around September in his mind so quickly? And then we learn in the later scene that that's when his wife left him. And it's like, I love the small details like that, where you can actually, like, it's not just that Charlie's like supernaturally good at lying. He's like pulling stuff, they're like half-truths out and using them in a different way.
Very verbal Kent.
Yes. And then there is, like I said, really the whole second half when it goes into thriller mode, because one of my favorite things, I think, in maybe any movie ever, is this whole sequence where it's Charlie following them and staking them out. Like I said, the great Nelson scene is in there at the gas station when he completely changes wardrobe in the gas station. And then we see him staking them out at the church. And then it's like the way that I think it's also, it gives you this really thrilling feeling of being in that situation, because we only ever see these scenes from Charlie's perspective. We never like have a Ray and Audrey scene in the middle of these until we get to the motel destination where they come together. So you really get this sense that you're like following somebody with Charlie. And then the way that this turns on its head, because we were talking about before about how in this movie you never know where you're going to end up. If you're watching it for the first time, you kind of have no idea where you're going to be in the next scene. And so it's like the way this turns on its head and turns into Ray being the one that's tracking them instead of Charlie tracking them the way it was before. And that's like, it's one of those cases where when we're suddenly following Ray being the tracker, is one of those moments where you stop and you're like, how did we get here from where we started? It's like, we didn't know this guy last night. And now he's like, it's kind of like Norman Bates scenario, where it's like, oh, we're following Marion Crane. And then suddenly we want this guy, there's this like, oh, is this guy going to get away with the murder of the character we've been following? And it's like, oh, this is the protagonist now. It feels like a little glimpse of that a little bit when we're watching Ray be the tracker. But like I said, the way that like everything is this perfect sort of stepping stone to the next thing makes sense when you go back and look again. I also love the small detail that took me forever to notice was the family car that Ray steals is pulling into the parking lot, and they're first getting there when Charlie and Audrey are leaving. I love that.
That's why they lingered in that and for so long.
And it's like I was talking about with the mom scene, where this movie takes what would be a really cliche conflict and like script writing 101, and just doesn't bother. It's like, oh, there's no conflict with the mom because the mom just knows and nobody cares. And then there's the moment after they've left Ray at the diner where they get into a fight and she kicks him out of the car. And this would typically be a moment where Audrey would drive off and then everybody would be apart, everybody would sulk, and then they'd eventually get back together. But she decides to not leave him there. And then they're still, they come to the non-verbal conclusion she's not leaving him behind. So they're still arguing when he just gets back in the car and they just leave together. I just love how crisis averted there. Even though they're still fighting, still the crisis was averted. And I can't say enough. I think the diner scene's my favorite scene in the movie, which is obviously a high bar already. And this is certainly my favorite Leota moment in the movie, where when Charlie just comes in and sits down and has this whole perfect plan of setting Ray up for like putting him in a position where he cannot do anything at all. He's completely powerless, which is completely out of Ray's wheelhouse to be powerless. And it's like the way Leota plays it from at first he's amused and exasperated, where it's like, this fucking guy, like he really thinks he can do this. And then he's like mocking him. But then it gets to the point to where he's defeated. Like he has an anger that comes from being defeated. Like one of my favorite deliveries of Ray Liotta's whole career is "fuck you too, Lulu," and it's and this whole scene is so perfect. And I love the fact that when he gets to the threats, when he says "you're really gonna regret this," they feel you can tell they're real threats, and he is an actual threat. But there's also a desperation to them. Like this is what you've brought me to. Is I'm gonna make you pay for this in a
The
really bad
emphasis,
way.
yeah, the emphasis on the really like is.
And then and when like he's taking his wall from it, he starts like the fake smiles. And it's like, hey, let's put on a show for the cops and the waitress and all that. And it's like Leota goes through the whole gauntlet in this one scene, and I love it so much. And I think really the last thing I want to mention is I think another reason this movie like means so much to me is that it's because obviously there are many stretches where I have trouble sleeping. So there's a lot of times where I'm just awake in the dead of night. And this is a perfect movie to watch in the I don't you will probably not find me more content in my life than when I'm watching something wild at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I think one reason for that is it feels so immersive because so much of the second half of the movie takes place in the dead of night. And then into the sunrise of the next day. Like the moment when he first leaves the motel after Audrey stays with Ray, by the time he gets back to the reunion building, the sun is rising in the background. And it's like we've been through a whole night now. And then the same thing happens after the diner scene, and then they come back to the city. That shot of them returning to the city and you see the sun rising behind New York is I live for that shot. It's like it feels so like it's so immersive when you're watching that at about the time that's actually happening. And like I said, with that and the characters and the way everything pieces together so much, and how immersive you can feel in scenes where you feel like you're Charlie following them. I really feel transported to another place when I'm watching this movie, despite the fact that it's a movie that takes place in the real world. And I don't know how many movies do that for me, like this one does. And I think that's one of the big reasons why I consider this a favorite. So I think that about sums up what I had prepared. So if that's enough for you.
In case you were worried about why I was taking off my glasses and doing the thing, apparently we're getting a live-action Pac-Man film soon.
Didn't we just discuss Pixels yesterday?
I think you brought it up again today.
Not be that, and it's trying to be sort of similar. They're trying to apparently to basically do a Sonic the Hedgehog. Which, depending how you feel on that film, could be good or bad. And
I feel like what they're doing for Sonic right now overall works, but I don't get how that would ever work for Pac-Man. But
and then following up.
By the way, brother.
Go ahead.
We were talking about people that Demme uses multiple times. I don't suppose you remember from a decade or so ago who plays the clerk of the liquor store that she robs. Tracy Walter.
Of course.
Who is also, if I'm not mistaken, is also in Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, he's at the funeral home.
Yeah.
He might be actually I think he's the coroner. Or the funeral director or something like that.
Yeah, I'm thinking he's in the camera scene when they're inspecting the body. I think.
Yeah, he's in that scene.
Yeah.
I want to say he's the coroner.
And then to follow up on yesterday and all that, Ezra Miller charged with felony burglary in Vermont.
So is he caught or what?
He's been charged, so I think so, yeah.
Well then.
You can't make it up, man. You can't make it up.
We've been talking about crime this whole video. Might as well end on Ezra Miller.
Bryce says, although he's a unique villain, and even for this rewatch, I think Ray gives me vibes of other characters, and his performance wasn't as a standout compared to Daniels, Griffith, or the background characters. I sort of understand.
As much as I disagree overall, I think that's fair, actually.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
it does feel like he doesn't go full sort of. I don't want to say sort of like munching on the scenery because it's not like Goodfellas is a B film, but it does feel like this is the first step to him sort of really getting that sort of the true sort of menace that you saw sort of in his later part of his career.
Because I do remember him saying in that SAG interview that, and I feel like you could put this together even if he didn't say it, that he got a lot of the parts that he got because of this movie.
Although considering Josephine does say, "Does anyone remember Ray Liotta in B movie?" I don't know whether something wild got him in B movie.
Hell yeah, I remember him in B movie.
My favorite detail in scene in B movie is when it very first cuts to him and he's adjusting the jar of honey so that his face is facing everybody. and that he does the laugh in animated form. He really gets to break out the laugh in this. It's glorious.
Bry also mentions they left the red car in the church parking lot. It's still there.
Yep.
Hasn't been picked up. They haven't towed it. So the random question from Binaural Dean: favorite Patton Oswalt movies or shows?
Big fan. First and foremost.
In terms
Still
of
to
like
this-
his
still-
non-comedy stuff, I still think he's just random sort of. Although he does show up eventually in picture, but he's on the phone for a fair bit for Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
I want to say my introduction to Patton Oswalt in film was Starsky and Hutch.
He's the guy that introduces Dancing Rick, isn't it?
Yeah, he's the one that falsely awards Dancing Rick the win, which causes a scene.
And I know you've mentioned a few of his stand-up bits. I still say my favorite Patton Oswalt stand-up bit is when he defends Nickelback.
I completely forgot he was in Calendar Girls.
Mhm.
And now it's ringing in the back of my head. I vaguely remember him being in Magnolia.
Yeah,
Depending on which side of the line you fall, his Twitter can be enjoyable.
Yeah.
Delmer Darien. I was trying to remember his name in Magnolia. That's what it is.
The one thing I didn't realise, uncredited at first for his first appearance, but he was actually a radio caller in San Andreas, as well as Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories for the GTA games. So
I just rewatched this recently, but if I remember, I think he's the one that puts the subliminal messaging in Zoolander.
He's the one that says
He's the
be a
monkey.
monkey. Be a monkey, Bill.
he's the monkey. Yes.
he is
I
listed as
remember
monkey
seeing him.
photographer. So
By the way, Vice City brings us full circle to Leota.
exactly. And then also, he does a good job in Ratatouille. To be fair, he works as Remy, as that sort of deal.
Yeah, the thing that really broke him, like, seemed to bring his acting to a lot of people's attention was Young Adult. But I like Young Adult, but I feel like it's pretty overrated too in most aspects.
He plays like a couple twins in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I vaguely remember that from was he in the first season? Because I feel like I remember that.
It's either the first or the second.
Yeah, because I only saw the first season, so.
Well, that must be the first one.
And of course, he was also one of the white voices in Sorry to Bother You with David Cross and all that.
I remember that. I think Big Fan might have to be a movie club thing down the line. That's something I want to bring more attention to, especially since he's the lead in it.
And then what was the weird thing? Hang on, there was something where he was like, yeah, Dude Bro Party Massacre 3, where he was also co-producer. Oh, from 5 Second Films, okay. And then he just randomly had a appearance in Red Letter Media Space Cop as well.
I bet you never dreamed when you said that the perfect way to end the video was to talk about Ezra Miller and crime, that we still had a Patton Oswalt discussion coming.
Yeah.
Well, if we're ending, I do have one more thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
Nib High football rules.
I'm gonna get real for a second. I was really looking forward to doing this video because I love this movie so much and I'm so passionate about it. And I was worried we were gonna be more than one person down. So I have to say to my brother that even though you did not get a chance to watch the movie, I extremely appreciate that you were still here and still got involved. So that's awesome. And I greatly appreciate it. So, is that it?
Yeah, I'm just having a quick chest check. Josephine says, I love when Patton Oswalt shows up in Curb Your Enthusiasm. One of my favourite stand-up bits is where he says, One of my favourite Oswalt stand-up bits is where he says, I want the most modern birth they can possibly give me, with regard to his pregnant wife at the time. Speaking of Nickelback, while they suck, and the song at the end of Spider-Man 2 is obviously not great, it still hits the movie. Which is fair. Speaking of David Cross, I'd love to see him and Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob, show up in a Vince Gilligan project, since they were in Mr. Show with Bob and all that. Penultimate episode, Better Call Saul.
I would very much like that as well.
And then Bri does bring up, as we get to our next hangout, AJ and Chris, you've got to think of your next picks. What's next?
I've already got mine.
Because as I am posting in chat, hopefully it shows up. Yes, it does, because apparently I'm allowed to put YouTube links in the chat. Thank God. We have Who Killed Captain Alex on the docket. It's interesting because turns out there's also a second version with director's commentary. So you don't have to watch the director's commentary one, but it might give you more of an idea of like why some of the shit happens as it does. Although, to be fair, the first 30 seconds also explains quite a bit as well. But I won't go into that, because that is
It probably helps also. Isn't the movie really short? Like, really short?
It's about 60, 70 minutes, yeah. I'm not expecting, So maybe you can watch both. Hell, if you enjoy it enough, you may want to watch, I think, the other one, I can't remember what it's called. Big Bully or something like that. I thought it was Bad Something. It's also free on YouTube, so if you want to sort of see what they got up to afterwards, it's annoying. Like all their stuff now, it just goes to sort of art house festivals, and you can't actually. The one, I don't know if it's I don't think it's a documentary because it doesn't. The way the write-up is, it doesn't sound like a documentary. But if I want to buy it on Amazon in HD, it is £25. Even like the Mission Impossible series is cheaper than that right now on bundle. So yeah, those are your links to the Who Killed Captain Alex with the VJ edition, and then also the director's commentary one if you sort of want to know sort of the insights into some of the stuff, because it will add to sort of the explanation and everything, which we'll get to. It's good that with that, I don't think we'll be talking about the plot. It will basically be sort of about the making of it and discussing it rather than, because I'm not expecting everybody to like it. I mean, I like it for ironic reasons.
Like I was saying, the reason I know it exists is because of the most pretentious person I've ever met on a movie forum, and that's saying something.
Oh wow! I am
And this
intrigued to hear the story behind that.
that person praised it as like one of the best movies of the decade or something. He was that kind of guy. He's the kind of guy that loves like Andy Warhol movies that are like 13 hours.
Oh right. I mean, it's good, but it's not that good.
Like what was that Andy Warhol movie where he just like, it's a still shot of a camera filming the Empire State Building for 8 hours? He's the kind of guy that's into shit like that.
Right. Bryce says apparently it's also on Tubi or Tubi, but
That
it's
makes
free on
sense.
YouTube. So, so you know you've got plenty of places to see the commandos, and all that. So that's your lot for this time around. Thanks to Josephine, Bry, Dean. I don't want to say the porn bot thanks. Also Spencer as well. Less thanks to the porn bot. And any of you, of course, watching.
I like that it's not just us, because there are other live streams I've watched lately where they mention the porn bot.
Yeah. He shows up in a lot of things. Basically, I think it's just a bot that spams things that are live. So I can't wait till I get to the CNN Sky News feed that's on YouTube, and it's like, the one thing that got me is like one of them is like, Putin didn't find girl with us. Like that deserves to be in a John Waters film because it makes no sense. So yeah, thanks you everybody for sort of tuning in whatever form you have. We'll be back August the 14th, no, 21st if I can count, for the Q&A bit, and then Monday the 22nd, Captain Alex is going to be killed. I think the aim is as well, because there'll be more of you here, the Sunday will be the declaration of what films are going to be in, and because we know that there's obviously more people on that, that'll be where we'll collate the votes, rather than on the somewhat quieter movie club stuff. And then I'll try and work out with whatever's going on in terms of us doing our awards predictions, even if Owen has to sort of send in sort of a list of notes that I can go through. Oh god damn it, I summoned the porn bot again. But the aim will be to try and have that the week after the next set of Popcast Movie Club and Q&A stuff, and then the week after that I guess we'll probably switch it to a Monday and Tuesday, because AEW like having pay-per-views on Sundays. I don't want it to clash with that. So that'll
I
be
miss their Saturday pay-per-views.
I don't think they do that now. WWE has cornered the market on Saturday. They're like, we don't care about the UFC. Nobody watches the UFC except everybody did. So great. So yeah, find me on Twitter. Ash is my name UK. There is a McDonald's video that is set to private whenever Owen wants to put it up as a video for a day. It is there for him to keep an eye on. There's some other stuff that I need to probably do as well in terms of snacks, stash things. Maybe some gaming stuff, I don't know. Might get round to it eventually. AJ's got movie reviews and versus. The versus remake versus original coming for the majority of the next month or two, starting in September. Chris, hype up your Instagram again.
It's Chris Hunt's Toys. This Saturday is the Toys for the Ages Expo. So look for pictures from the expo and what I end up picking up.
And yeah, I'm on Twitter at Ash is my name UK. AJ cannot be found on social media. And just like Keith Richards, I keep trying to think of like another comparison. I'm trying to think of other people that cannot be killed by conventional weapons.
He's off the grid like Bob Lee Swagger.
Yeah.
That's random,
I'll allow it.
but I'll take it.
Thanks for everybody watching, listening, all that good stuff. And until tomorrow, boys and girls. Yeah, let's use Craig instead. Right, Craig. Thanks, everybody.